Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar Elm, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by Gary Wilson, founder of Heads Up Leading, a leadership development organization helping businesses build thriving human-centered cultures through a Christ-centered leadership framework. With decades of leadership experience in the corporate world, military world, and the faith-based community, Gary has developed a unique perspective on how to transform leadership from the inside out. Gary, welcome to Founders Future.
Oh, thank you so much. It's actually good to be here. I'm excited about the conversation. Looking forward to what we come up with today. So,
Me too. I
thank you.
always like to start from the beginning. So take us on a little trip down memory lane to before you started Heads Up Leading. What were you doing at the time? And then what was really the motivation behind starting the company?
The military time was a fantastic foundation for me. I was military. I left high school, went to West Point after that, straight out of high school, graduated 4 years later. And I had a lot of growing and changing going on at that time that actually set the stage for my leadership life. They were good. One of the things West Point does so well is to put you into leadership roles right out of the chute.
Mm,
They launched me forward 24 years later after starting there. I retired from the military, having had a great deal of opportunities
mm,
to lead in all sorts of different contexts, everything from a war zone to overseas one time to several different settings in the States to include infantry, where I was working with folks that doing the most basic important things that soldiers do, up to
mm,
logistics for a core level operation, which to me was fascinating to start understanding what 30 and 40,000 people did out on a battlefield. And I was an operator for a core support command, which allowed me to be at the general officer level and watch and see what was going on and hear where decisions were made. So that was a fantastic ground for me because my wife and I both felt called to the ministry. And at that time, we stepped out and into the role of the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army is where I started learning a lot more about business and retail. And in pastoring, those are things I didn't know a lot about from my past. I'd been a soldier more than anything through those years. And tell people God's got a funny sense of humor. Beware, He'll make use of you if you say the answer is yes, Lord. What's the question? Look out, here He comes. And we had a blast. Of all places, my wife had worked in a recovery center one time when we were stationed in Washington D.C. And that same person who she worked for then actually hired us into the role of Salvation Army. And running those centers, we actually ended up going, and he became the commander of the centers while we were very young in the work. We turned around 17 years later, we became the commanders of the same centers he had been in charge of when he hired us on. That was a really fascinating route. Nobody had ever done it that way before. I say we're oddballs because where we came from with our military background into that arena. But on top of that, we were oddballs when we got to where we finished at. And in that finishing is where you wanted to get to, I think. Or in the finishing of those last several years in the ARC, I was having a blast doing what I was doing. My wife did not enjoy that part as much because she was out of the arena where her personality could really feel most effective and feel comfortable. Plus, when you're suddenly in charge of something that large, you always have this imposter syndrome. What the heck am I doing sitting in this seat?
yeah,
And for
yeah.
her, that was a real powerful detractor at times. I think I'd been drubbed on enough times at that point. I really wasn't worried about it one way or the other. My job, one of the things I did learn growing up that I finished with is stay focused on what you're doing now. Don't worry about promotions. Don't worry about silly things. You take care of the folks here. You take care of the mission here. And that was something I learned at West Point.
Mm,
Lead by example. And one of the things they taught so well there's every situation you get into is mission and people. There's no
mm,
such. So when you start thinking that way, all of a sudden it changes you. And I realized in my last years of running the centers that I felt like that's part of how we ended up having an opportunity to be the commanders of the organization. Was after a while, folks realized we at least had that part an understanding of that. And I think that from the Christian standpoint, from the faith-based standpoint, was an important issue too. I think anybody who says they're quote a faith-based a leadership person yet doesn't take care of their people, I question that. I'm not sure exactly how that possibly fits into your scenario of your faith-based operating. I don't care what your faith is. If it's that important to you, almost all of them require us to treat others like we want to be treated. And
yeah.
yeah, if you need me to shut up here, just throw a
No, I
hand.
appreciate you breaking that down. And I appreciate because it's always good to understand where somebody's mentality comes from. And a lot of that
Yeah.
comes from the experiences that they have. Sounds like West Point was a big part of that for you. The military was a big part of that
Yeah.
for you. And I love what you said about mission and people, because that is directly like you can directly apply that to leadership from a business perspective. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
this is a business podcast. A lot of founders listen to this. So I would love to fast forward to give the listeners more context into your company, Heads Up Leading. Let's start off with, who is your ideal customer? Who do you love to work with? And then from there, what are the different offers and services that you provide?
I appreciate you bringing me along to that point because that's been part of the growth over the last year and a half, 2 years. As I originally went from looking at groups like Vistage and trying to figure out if that was something I could make happen here. I felt like my salesmanship is not fantastic. I tell folks I can sell Jesus real well, and I can sell leadership if they'll sit down with me and chat about it. But other than that, I realized I need to work on that. I need to
Mm.
work on what I present. As I was retiring, I realized that I needed to learn how to be a better coach because I'd been leading myself for so long. That a coach needs to ask better questions even than the leader does, and a coach needs to be willing to stay out of the way of the person, let that person actually work themselves to where they're trying to go to with your assistance and all of that helped me start this. What that brought us to, though, is 2 years ago we went ahead and built a company. Heads Up Leading. Heads Up Leading, I tell folks, very simple. God said look to the hills, look from horizon to horizon. I always think of, I was a quarterback and a linebacker at different times in my life, and I played a lot of sports and did a lot of things where you better have your head on a swivel, or something you're going to get hurt, and or you're not going to be ready, not going to be where you're supposed to be. And to me, those are great leadership tenets. And then the last one is I was always taught to keep your head on a swivel nearby in your close proximity. If you needed to grab somebody and give them a hand and pull them up, pull them forward, push them, whatever it was going to take. If you were really others centered and others oriented, you were constantly on the lookout for that. So head to the hills, head to the horizon, eyes to the around you were the basis of the company and the thinking. I'm built as a person more in the others centered role. I take care of myself and things, but quite honestly, except when I let the devil or somebody else get in the way and distract me, I tend to stay focused where I'm supposed to on other folks. And I think that's what leading is about.
So, who would you say is the ideal customer? Is there a specific type of organization
Mm.
that you want to work with? Do you only work with executives? Help us understand a little bit more of
Okay.
what that looks like.
I originally started out looking at executives in large corporations just because I'd spent my last 7 years in particular at a large corporation. But this last year or so, I've narrowed that down to my practice and my expertise was actually centered more in the 2 to 17, 15 million, $20 million range organizations is where I actually repeatedly went into and had to build up and put in a position of success. And so I realized I'm shifting gears in this as I'm continuing to learn where to take a new organization to. I want to be able to help the smaller organization. I want to help the organizations where I see a huge heart, but they have no training in the leadership management arena, and they're going to become the lid in no time at all.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, especially if they're having success, they quickly outpace themselves and yet don't have a clue what the past might be. This 2 year reflection, after a 3 year reflection, really, after I retired, where I was no longer busy, tied to a desk, and so many things going on, or travel. I traveled constantly. I traveled 40 out of 50 plus weeks a year. Now I get more time to sit and think, and I realized everybody could use a model.
Yeah.
And I look back, and John Maxwell asked three simple questions. He says, "Can I trust you?" No, I'll say these backwards if I'm not carefully. Do you care for me? Can you help me? And can I trust you? And when I was reading along, and I realized he spoke out with three questions, everything I'd learned about leadership and encapsulated into one simple model. Now I call it 5 C's model of leading. Or actually, what I'm starting to realize is it's anybody's model of leading, because if people want to influence, if people want involved in leadership, then it's really very simple. If they can start explaining to folks how to express caring, how to communicate caring, how to communicate their competence and the character that'll sustain those three, if they can learn to do those things consistently, then they'll produce a culture which sustains it. And I realize that
Mhm.
simple model, I can take that model and use Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership, and I can tell you where you're operating at and say, why don't we try to grow to this next piece? I'm also adding in a piece that I realized I did not know how much of a grasp I had on this until recent years. But when you go into an organization that size, it really helps if you've had some practice and or a tool to help you look around and say, where are you missing the boat? Let me help you find $50,000 profit right now. Let's get this started in the right way. Let's show you the fruit of what happens if you can make these changes. And then you go deeper. Then you start in. So let's develop these leaders so they're prepared for the next curve you're going to build. Let's develop these teams and let's tie them together stronger. Let's make sure you got the right people in the right seat on it. And so that's what's happened now. Is that's my focus has really shifted to more of that size. Big decisions for me in the coming days are: do I go ahead and spend enough money to go ahead and invest in a profit accelerator system of some sort so I can go faster to that? I can do those things longhand because I've done it so many times now. But I realize I'm maybe tools. I
Yeah.
think. Go
When
ahead.
you say you're looking to invest in some sort of accelerator system, what are you hoping that you're gonna get out of something like that? Is it gonna get in front of more people, close more deals? What does that look like?
I believe after I thought about it that your average person out there, no matter who they are, especially from a small business, one of the questions they've always got is, how do I make more money?
Yeah.
If I was satisfied, if I was where I wanted to be, if I was where I think I should be, then I would already be there. And I realized that every organization I went into, the Salvation Army gave us the opportunity to run 5 different centers, and they ranged in size from a $2 million center to a $15 million center. And in the last center, we had 300 people working for us. I had a chance to do all of these things together in that one spot. But and you know what? People so is it wasn't God and your pastoring and your spirituality. That is
Yeah.
one of the 4 things you're responsible for in one of these positions. But in the Salvation Army, that center also had to pay for itself entirely by the retail job that they did to include the logistics to support it. And then they also had to, I lost my train of thought there for a second, but in the business side, they had to be able to give 10 or 15 or 20% off the top to the headquarters so they could do other
Yeah.
things. So I found out real quick that although I was in a quote nonprofit arena, I was in a full scale, feet on the ground, moving retail operation that was really for profit. And on top of that, my workforce was 50 to 70% made up of folks who were struggling and fighting for their life and addiction. And I was supposed to somehow not only help these folks change and fight for their life, but then
Yeah.
teach them how to be good employees and workers, or just workers in this case, since they weren't employed yet. It was a fantastic training ground.
Yeah.
But what it taught me was every time I went in, I realized I had to look around and ask myself, what are they struggling with? Where are they shutting doors? Where are they minimizing something? Where are they not maximizing something that would allow them to make profit? A profit accelerator system takes a lot of that. I don't have to rack my brain doing it. It actually allows you to plug in some information you get for organization quickly and quickly come up with the 30, 40, 50 suggestions, 10 or 7 or 8 or 12 that are useful right now. Let's talk about that. Let's get you on the process of going through those. So that's why I looked at that. I realized if that's what everybody, as a founder, I had to stop thinking about what it is I know and what it is I like doing and ask myself, what is it people are looking for?
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
do they
that's
need?
huge. That's
Yeah.
huge. What are they looking for? What do they need? Walk
Yeah.
me through right now when it comes to you acquiring more customers and generating more leads. What are you doing right now to bring in more business?
I think that's been my weakest point all along. I think I've built up my relationships, my connections, my network has
Yeah.
multiplied by 10, from 300 or so to 3,000. I've got many great folks like yourself that I've met through the relationships being built
Yeah.
in this. And I think that's all critical, but there is a bridge to cross sooner or later where you start finding out what is it these other folks actually. I've had a lot of exchanges with folks who want to help me, and I've enjoyed them. I've learned from every one of them. And in a few cases, I said, look, I'm just going to put your stuff over here for now because I'm not there yet. But I hope to
Yeah.
come back. I look forward to coming back to see you. I'm in that same situation. I'm now trying to cross the bridges to, I hear you saying you've got a need. Let's try to work on that. If we can get you some solid ground here, then maybe perhaps you'd like to take this a little further. And we can actually see if we can grow this to meet that vision you've got out there. And
Yeah.
I'm just now to the point of being there
Got
where
it.
I've got some consulting roles that I picked up through different channels before that really didn't come through my connections. And that taught me a lesson too. I'm probably missing the places where I should be getting information out. I'm not doing as good job there as I need to.
Mhm.
So you're catching me on a downhill run with my hair on fire, learning about the places I really need to focus in on.
Yeah.
And it's been quite the journey to get there.
Yeah. Where do you feel like, and I appreciate you for sharing that. Where do you feel like the bottleneck is? I'll list off a couple and then you can tell me what you think it is. Is it getting in front of more people, having more conversations, closing those conversations, or maybe a combination of those things?
I definitely believe it's closing the conversations for
Got it.
me is a bigger part. I never spent a lot of time in sales myself. I was always busy doing. And I spent most of my time, quite honestly, the last 40 years guiding other folks to do. If you think about the roles I had, it really was, I really was in a seat of my job was not really ever to be on the ground actually doing a lot of the tasks that had to be done. It was a lot of folks working with me doing that. And my job is to make sure they had the right vision, the right resources they needed, the right encouragement, all those things. The caring, the confidence, and the character piece came back into play constantly. I believe closing the deals is a big issue. I believe the issue now is I realize as I've grown out and met so many neat people that I need to focus harder on meeting the right people, people who have a need for what I'm able to share with them. I don't want to waste people's time.
Yeah.
I don't want to be making them think somehow I can help when I don't have the capacity to help them. I have my ego is fixed at this point in life enough. I don't have to worry about telling somebody I can do everything. But I think I looked like that for a while. I think as any founder out there trying to put information out, they're going to have to figure out sooner or later, you can't fix everybody's everything.
Yeah.
And so what is it you do best? Listen to a podcast recently that talked about re-leading. There's a guy got a book out there new about that now, and he's dead on. He's spot on. I'm a much better re-leader than I am a creator. I'm a better re-leader than I am a founder. But as a founder, I've had to learn how you focus this capacity you have, get it in here and let folks start understanding. So I need to meet the right people and close conversations better.
I like that. And I like that you boiled it down to those two, because that clarity is very important. And I'm curious, when you think of your vision and you think about where you want to take the company over the next 12 months, what are those goals? Are there any specific revenue targets, performance targets? What are you aiming towards?
I have a bad habit or a tendency to undershoot, to be conservative. In my mind, so far, I've been working in the 50,000, 100,000 range. Part of that's also a family orientation.
Yeah.
My age, I want to make sure I'm where my grandkids are doing special things, and I want to be where my wife wants to do some special things. And so I'm trying to make sure we take care of those parts of life, but I still have enough vigor left in me and desire. And I do have an overwhelming desire to share things that I know that really work.
Yeah.
If I can help folks grab hold of them.
Yeah.
So I'm looking in terms of, do I see myself working with people in such a manner I could easily accomplish 10,000 a month? Yeah, absolutely. Dollars and cents wise, that's a handful of people. Sometimes that's one person all year long. Who knows?
Yeah.
I would like to work with a handful of people. I would love to have an ongoing situation where I'm working with folks and there's always somebody in the background. I'm not, honest answer, if I was to make 500,000, I'd probably be happy. Would I at some point in time have to look at that and decide that I needed to branch that out and pass some of it to somebody else? Probably. I'm not going to get younger. I'm blessed right now to be in good shape and working out still and all that stuff, but I can't always count on that. So I have to be aware of that also. I don't let folks down either once I start.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a deep drive in me. I've always been that way.
Yeah.
I can't help that.
I love that. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they're interested in your services?
The Gary at headsupleading.org is the easy way. Phone number is 334-734-1258 is also my working phone number. That helps them stay away from all the folks who I think are just calling who really want to help me in life.
Yeah.
to all those things, a slightly older I tell people I'm not old, I'm just seasoned. When I look in the mirror in the morning, sometimes that guy scares me a little bit, but most of the time I'm okay.
There you go. Are there any final words that you want to leave us off with before we wrap up?
I've totally enjoyed the conversation, Ammar. It's been you did a nice job of offering me some really great questions to look forward to. I think that'd be something anybody could do for anybody for a conversation. I think you taught me again a nice tool. You gave me even better questions than I could have imagined myself. I enjoy the thinking. I tell folks there's nothing I enjoy more than being helpful to them. And I believe when we work together, we can be successful. I don't let organizations go backwards when I get involved. That's not what I was taught, and it's not what I've done, and I don't believe it any more now than I ever did. Yeah. Let's go. As John Maxwell said, let's get up that hill somewhere. All growth is up there somewhere. Let's go do it.
Yeah. Gary, thank you so much for your time today.
You're awesome, man. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Anytime. So that wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to reach out to Gary Wilson on LinkedIn. You could also go to headsupleading.org. And if you're a business owner and you're looking to scale your business and really enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to discover how we can support your growth journey. Until then, keep on climbing.